Hello.
What's up?
Welcome back to Living at 209, Lemons at 209.
And when life gives you lemons, do you have a lemon?
Yes.
Um,
Hold them close and tight.
yeah, exactly. I'm the lemon. No,
Sour
but
one.
don't you lemon back? But we are back, and we're actually not at 209 today.
No.
We are at an undisclosed location. But it's been nice. Look, it looks like it could be the Bahamas, but we're not in the Bahamas. It's undisclosed.
We're in the Bahamas.
But yeah, it has been a while, but it's good to be back.
Yes.
And we are still living, and we'll be back at 209 soon. But yeah, we thought, a recent exciting, is it a life event?
Life event.
Would we call Hamilton a life event?
Watching Hamilton.
Watching Hamilton. It was an experience.
Experiencing Hamilton.
Yeah, it's an experience. We recently watched. Well, firstly, both of us have been really busy. We've been living life, so that's why there haven't been any, and we haven't felt particularly inspired. Hey, no. But Hamilton, it gave inspiration. So it was a movie we recently watched, but originally it was a musical about Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton. You have to watch the movie to get that.
Inside joke for all Hamilton watchers.
We know all of you. We see you there. But yeah, he was one of the founding fathers of America, and there was a musical made about him. It was released in 2016, and they performed it then. And then the movie on Broadway, yes. And then they recorded that show at some stage, and we got to watch it recently. And man, was it an experience! Like,
It was brilliant.
yeah, it was awesome. We definitely recommend it. And obviously, I mean, it's not a perfect movie. It's or like in the sense that there's definitely things to watch out for, but it was in terms of just the themes that run through, in terms of what you really can learn in it, and the fact that it's history was historic in a sense, was really really nice to learn a bit more about America, to learn that that there were just elements of the history that were really just cool to see highlighted, so it was quite cool to watch.
Yeah. Also, disclaimer: it is singing non-stop, so don't think that you're going to hear any talking.
Yes.
It really took me a little bit of time to get over that. There's some very nice rap
Caribbean
parts,
reggae,
but it's like one non-stop musical. It's not High School Musical where they can talk in between.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
This is Hamilton.
And ironically, there's a song they called Non-Stop as well, so watch out for that one. But yes, so it had, as I already said, it had some amazing themes in there, and that's just part of what we wanted to touch on today. We want to chat about Hamilton, so I'm just gonna throw it over to Estelle and hear from her what theme she enjoyed in Hamilton. There was a lot happening, and if she picks the theme that I have in mind, that'll be hilarious because I don't think I chose the second one.
I think for me, okay, there's like certain lines that stick with you, or lines of the songs and stuff.
Yes.
So there was quite a few cool things. I think there was sort of like human relationships sort of thing, like, and also your inner sort of drive stuff with Satisfied and that came out. But for me, just at the moment, what I've been thinking about, the whole thing of history has its eyes on you.
Yeah.
And like obviously the fact that it is a historic thing.
Yes.
I guess everyone knows that, but when it's said, and then when it's an example, and the fact that it's a true story, this is not just a made up thing.
Yeah.
Really shows like history has its eyes on you. So and I think at the end as well, there's that big thing of like who's telling your story. So I think story and narrative and history are sort of themes for me that were cool to see there. And then I think the individual pursuits and relationships and that within the setting of history came out, but could have been anyone's story being told in history, but it was those particular people's stories being told.
Yeah, and I mean, I loved what you said there about history having its eyes on you, in the sense that, like, I mean, when they were living then, when George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, when they were all, founding America, as we know it today, they didn't know that history, that they would be in our history books. They might have sensed that maybe there was something profound, but I don't think they knew the extent, or I'm not sure if they envisioned what would come years later and things like that. So it's quite interesting. But for me, a theme that was like quite cool was, I think, the idea of redemption that exists, like redemption / forgiveness that was that was there. Like, I think the initial redemption is the fact that, okay, this isn't a major spoiler, but if you've done American history or something, you would know. But if you're South African, you probably haven't, and from Zim probably haven't either. But is the fact that Alexander Hamilton, he the background that he comes from was, he didn't come from great wealth, and the reason he ended up in America was because his town came together and they raised funds for him to go there after the island that he was from was struck by a hurricane. And so, like, kind of like this idea of even like this life that didn't seem, like much could come from it, like how it was redeemed in that physical sense. But also at the towards the end, there's a moment where Alexander Hamilton needs forgiveness of sorts, and it was so cool to kind of like see forgiveness play out in the play, and like this idea of like I think redemption, that was just like, it was really nice to have a to watch something that came to terms with our need as people for redemption, like that we really do, and it can be in small things, it can be in huge things where there's a need for redemption, but it was really nice to have a story that spoke of redemption in such a in a beautiful way. Like, it was really like when that scene plays out where Alexander is being forgiven of what he did, which we're not going to reveal. It's really beautiful to see, and I think something so valuable and needed in our world today is more stories, but also just more like realities of redemption and forgiveness. So that was cool.
Something interesting, my mom always says that any really good story is going to have the theme of redemption central to running through it. And then kind of connecting that, like, because God is the best story writer, and his story has redemption at its heart, then when we like, it's a good story, it's because there's that redemption. And then I also have a question for you, because as you were talking, it's like, Alexander has this amazing redemption, but what do you think of Burr? Does he, obviously there's an event that happens at the end, does he get redemption? Does he want redemption? Does he deserve redemption? Burr and redemption, where does he fit in?
That's an interesting question. I would say, does he get redemption in the historic moment? Not necessarily, like, as kind of like because there's a line that he says, now I'm the villain in your history books. you can, was that too much of a spoiler?
No, it's okay. It's
a
okay.
Subtle spoiler. But he says that now I'm the villain in your history books, and he says I was too young to know. And so this idea of and what that's also, I think, what makes Hamilton such a good story is that it didn't paint these perfect. Alexander Hamilton has his imperfections.
Yes, there's real complex characters.
Yes. So it's like they
it's
do
unusual. For things we watch these days.
Exactly. To not over glorify someone or just like undercut them and say that they sucked. And so with Burr, I enjoy that they said that when he sings that, just saying like now and he mentions how he was too young, and even though history has its eyes on us, I think there's this sense in which, like, in him I find there's almost this. When he sings that, there's this appeal to the fact that we all need redemption, that hey, there's certain choices that we've made at certain points in our lives that if they were to be spotlighted by the world and actually be put into a history book, people would be like, wow, it would change everything maybe about what people think of us. Maybe they thought we were quite great and they find that particular detail out. So I think it's this idea with him. I would hope that in us looking back, we're not so lofty as to think that, whoa, we couldn't have made such mistakes, or we couldn't have we all fall short in of God's glory, and just even in our relationships with one another, and misunderstanding, and there's a lot of that in the story as well, just kind of like missing each other, and I think it's so sobering, because it's like we don't have the full story. We don't history has its eyes on us, but history isn't even being written by us. There's a part that we play, but there's other parts that exist there. So I would hope that he gets redemption from us viewing that and being like, whoa, we could have made those mistakes, or I'm also just thinking, as you're speaking, about two things. The one being that, kind of off the back of what you've said, where there's a certain element that once history is history, cannot be redeemed. Burr did what he did, but then I think that's the amazing thing about spiritual reality, that it can overlay things that have happened, and so all of us know, like, there's stuff that's happened. It's now in the history book. Even if other people aren't going to read it, we know God
what's happened, and God knows what's happened, most important, but he can overlay things that have been written, which is just interesting. Someone like Burr, we can still have hope for him, even when like
The
even though
history
those
books
things
wouldn't-
yeah, can't be rewritten.
Yes.
And then the relationships front about their like complexity. I'm even thinking of Angelica and Elizabeth, two sisters who have this, in one sense, an amazing relationship, but there's
Yes.
also like really, I want to say terrible element to it, but there's
Yeah, I mean,
something bad where the one sister's behind the other one's back,
Yes.
and yet they're meant to be each other's greatest champions, but
Yeah.
there isn't a complete transparency or purity.
Yes.
Transparency in their relationship, and it's just interesting to see that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a realism in that.
Yeah.
Where, like you said, a lot of the time it'll just be painted like, oh, the perfect sister relationship.
Yeah, or a villain, like, you know what I mean? It's
or
one or
the
the other.
terribly can never be reconciled. thing,
Yes,
but-
yeah. How it's a bit more complex than that.
And what do you think of the music?
Loved it.
I mean, the whole thing was music, but
Again,
the songs.
I love the songs. I've listened to the soundtrack so many times. But I will. Would you like to know my favorite?
give me your favorite.
My favorite. It has to be Dear Theodosia, and that one is when two of the characters have children, and they sing about so Theodosia is the one character's child, and then Philip is the other character's child, and it's just so beautiful, like their excitement at the prospect of being a parent, and and even that as an opportunity. I think both of them see it as redemptive opportunities of how they didn't have fathers in their life, and now they have this opportunity to do that for their children. And I was like,
And they didn't quite have a nation, and now they're like their
Yes.
children can grow in
Yes,
this
yes.
sort of nation with a constitution.
yes,
etc.
yes. And I think, I mean, just that desire as well to do things not just for us who are living now, but with kind of like this future hope in mind that, we're a part of a greater narrative that isn't even born yet, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Is that the song where it says "Wait for it"?
No, Wait for It is a different one. Because is that your favorite?
Yes. I think it's not that great in the context of the story, but I'd sort of want to appropriate my appreciation for that song. Musically, it just does a lot.
It's a tune, yeah.
It's got like it's like a real build up. It's like you're waiting for it.
Yes,
you
yeah.
know, sometimes actually when you're listening to a song and you're like, oh, the bass is gonna drop. Wait for it.
Yeah.
Or there's the bass drop. But this one doesn't necessarily have a bass drop. But there's like this crescendo type of thing. There's a real waiting for it. And I think that there is positive waiting
Yes,
that
yeah,
happens.
yeah.
And yeah, I just like that song.
Yeah.
So I'll pick that one.
Yeah, Wait for It. Anyway, we hope you guys don't have to wait for it too long before we release our next video.
Oh yes. But the next 2 months are intense for both of us, so no promises.
So wait for it. But yes, thank you for listening in, and watch Hamilton, enjoy Hamilton if you
Yes.
have the chance to. And
May
history.
there be many redemption stories
Yeah,
for us all.
exactly.
Cheers.
You cry, and you see what you heard in the sea when you see me go by. Why so sad? Remember we made an arrangement when you went away. Now you're making me mad. Remember, despite our estrangement, I'm your man. You'll be back, soon you'll see. You'll remember you belong to me. You'll be back, time will tell. You'll remember that I served you well. Oceans rise, empires fall. We have seen each other through all of that. And when push comes to shove, I will send a fully armed battalion to remind you of my love. Da 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 da.